Hey, welcome to our broadcast. I'm Frank Wooden.
And I'm John Hughes. So glad to be with you guys this morning. How are you? I know everybody in the background is going, we're fine, you can't hear us. Hey, I want to let you know about a couple changes that are taking place pretty soon with Simon Cross. There's some enhancements that we're adding, and you'll be hearing more about them. We've spoken to a few folks that are excited about some of the changes and the learning that will take place. But watch your emails, you'll be hearing more from us. So, Frank, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, so we're obviously really excited to be with you again today. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. It means the world to us that you value this time that we can help you out. We want to come alongside you and help you to and your organization to do well. And so one of the things that we'll be working on, this will be the last webinar that we will present in this fashion. One of the things we've been looking at is realizing it's helpful when we can kind of feel like we're part of a community. And so we're going to switch video conferencing formats starting next month, and it'll kind of give you a taste of where we're going to head into in 2020 and our new plans that we've got set up for that. But we're going to go to Zoom conferencing, and when we switch to Zoom conferencing, we're actually going to be able to see each other. So for some of us, it'll be the first time that we will have seen each other face to face, though not in the same room. But I think it'll be fun to and profitable for us to kind of feel like we're in a group. And so you'll get to interact, and when we ask questions or do that type of thing, you'll be able to go, oh yeah, you know, that was a great question. And we think it's gonna really increase the learning potential, and we're really excited about that. So don't worry, you don't have to put on your best makeup or dress or whatever on that day. Just be yourself, and that's how John and I treat this. We want to add value to you. So let me just get us started, and then John is going to pop in here and do the second part of our session. So John and I, we work with nonprofit leaders all the time, people just like you and I, executive directors, other key leaders in nonprofit world. And one of the things that we hear, it really doesn't matter what size your organization is. We hear it from small organizations to large organizations, and it's this: I wish I had a better board. I wish that either I could recruit better board members, or my current board members could get more engaged, or a combination of the two. And I know for those of you who are with us, and maybe you are in a smaller organization, when I tell you, and I know some of you heard me say these words, listen, I hear this same thing from the larger organizations. It kind of makes you feel a little bit better, because you realize, well, it's not just us, that everybody is trying to work their head around, how do I have a better board? So we're doing this webinar today specifically on two things that will get your board support. We want you and your board to be a team. We want your board to support you, and so we want to help you with that. In the past, I've had a bad board and I've had a good board. It was the same board. When I started with my organization, I inherited my board members. Maybe you kind of walked into a similar situation. The person that had been the director before me, who had run this nonprofit, had later on, I discovered, kind of a dysfunctional situation. And as a result, I inherited a board that was in many ways dysfunctional. I can still remember, we used to do our board meetings in evenings because, like so many board members, they don't have the ability to take off during the day. So we had an evening board meeting. And I remember one evening, I had an older board member who pulled up, and the entire parking lot's empty. And of course, the closest spaces to the front of the building where we're going to go in is a handicap parking spot. And this gentleman was older. He was a little slower getting around, had been disabled, and he pulled into the handicap parking. No one else is going to be there that night except board members. Found out later on that we were sitting in the board meeting going, did anybody ever hear from so-and-so? And no, I thought he was going to be here. So we have our meeting. We go out into the parking lot, And missing board member has been sitting in his vehicle the entire time in the parking lot. So I went over to the window. I said, "What happened? Did you just show up, or did you get?" He said, "No, I've been here the entire time, but I saw that so and so parked in a handicap spot. I know they're not handicapped, and I got so mad, I just decided to sit here." Well, I look at board members probably the same way that you do. I expect more out of my board than to be people who fuss and fume. And so that was, to me, a good illustration. I have a lot of work to do to help my board become the type of board that can support me, support my organization. And that's the kind of board that I ended up growing. We went from literally $125,000 a year in annual income to $775,000 a year in annual income. And I ended up with a great board. Matter of fact, John Hughes, who's doing this webinar with me today, John was one of my board members. So got your handout, send it via email. If you don't, just jot down a couple of notes, but if you've got that handout, there'll be a couple of fill-ins. So let's get started. First thing, before we actually jump into our two things, is I want you to understand this. The board you have now is the board that you have now for one of two reasons. It's either by default or it's by design. Default or design. Default just means it is what it is. I inherited this board, or board members come and go, but you can make the board what you want it to be by design. And it's kind of the difference between the real deal and the ideal. The real deal is what we live with. But there's always in the back of our mind, I think, we have it for our organization, we have it maybe even for personally for ourselves, it's the ideal. This is where I want it to be. And that board will never happen unless you design it to happen. Boards don't just naturally coalesce and everybody fits together and they step it up and they give and everything just flows. That never happens. Boards only become that way by intentionality, by design, by working at it. So we're going to share the two things, and I already sneaked what they are out in our email earlier today because we wanted you to know what we're going to talk about. There are two things you can do to get your board support. It's to raise expectations and to cultivate relationships. And so what we're going to do is kind of break these two areas down a little bit more in depth, kind of dwell down. How do I raise expectations? What does it really mean to cultivate relationships? And I just want to tell you now, they're real simple. We'll give you some little tips and some insight in how it really works. But if you will raise the expectations, if you will cultivate relationships, I guarantee it will turn your board around or help your board to go to the next level. If you're already doing these things, maybe you'll glean a couple little things that just might even fine tune it a little bit more for you. But these, as we look at a whole range of things, I think it really comes down to these two things. So that's why we're going to keep it real simple today. You don't have a list of 27 things that you need to do to get your board's support. It's just real simple. So let me handle the first part, raising expectations. And the first thing I want you to understand this is, if you have diminished expectations, you'll have diminished returns. Diminished expectations always leads to diminished returns. So, on the other side of it, if you raise the expectations, you're going to raise the return, the benefit to you, to the organization. And I think that sometimes, and we've all been there, I've lived this world of recruiting board members or trying to get my board to be what it is that sometimes we just want good, decent people, and we want all the positions to be filled. And so to do that, in our mind, we think, I've got to keep the bar low enough that almost anybody that just kind of got a little bit level of leadership or interest could step in and be a part of the board. I don't want to make it so hard that I've got half of my board slots are empty and I never seem to be able to fill those slots. But if you'll take that approach of like, I got to lower the bar, I got to have diminished expectations, shouldn't put too much on a board, I shouldn't ask, too much of them, then you're going to see the returns that that board provides to you and your organization are going to be minimal. And whenever you walk into an organization, we have friends who run different nonprofits, and you meet with them, or you're at their facility, or you're hearing about their programming or whatever. Whenever you hear of an organization that is doing very well and is just nailing it, there's almost always behind it a great board that has high expectations for the organization and for themselves. So this is why this becomes so critical. I think it's almost impossible to have a great organization without a highly functional board that will kind of step up with you. So how do you raise expectations? First thing I want you to understand is it starts with you, okay? You are the executive director. Many of you are full-time in your positions as executive directors, but not even all of you have that luxury of being able to work exclusively for your nonprofit, but many of you do. And you're the ones who put your heart and soul into it. You're the ones who, are trying to work on a budget, and you're trying to, handle staffing and programming and fundraising and all these things. It really does rest on your shoulders so much, right? And so you say, well, I think I'm probably working harder than any of my board members. I think I'm working many times more than they are putting in each month. But are there ways, even within yourself, that you can raise the expectation in a board level because you are raising it up within yourself? So let me just kind of give you a couple of simple little thoughts here. I think it's a great idea that you plan out your board meetings, calendar them on the calendar for a year. If a year, for some of you, like if you're not calendaring them at all right now, just say, I'm going to get the next 6 months on the calendar. And all my board members are going to know it. This is when these events are coming up. This is when we're going to have our board meeting, so that they can all put it on their calendar and everybody knows. And that's a way where these aren't last minute thoughts like, oh my gosh, I don't think we've had a board meeting in a while. Yeah, probably time to do one. I wonder if I can get, everybody together and we can meet this Wednesday. That may work, but it won't work long term to help you to have a highly functional board. You've got to project out further. Along with that, then you are preparing your agendas, you're getting all your reports ready, and that's in the hands of your board members, perhaps sent out as an attachment to an email about a week in advance. Now, here's why this is really important. I know if I come into a meeting and I don't know the agenda, and all of a sudden something is presented and an action is expected, it's really hard for me to do that on more than just a few moments notice. I may kind of take my cues from others in the room, and if there's a negative person that speaks out, I might go, oh, they're right, maybe we shouldn't do this. And if it's somebody who's really enthusiastic and going for it, I might back it just because there seems to be some enthusiasm around it. But if you really want high quality board members who have raised their expectations, you need their input. You want them, if you're recruiting the best board members, you want their valuable insight. If it's been important to you to have somebody on your board that's business minded, then let's run it like a business so that they can help you to do even better in that way. If it's critical to have somebody on your board who has marketing skills, then present an organization that they would want to help you market. Another thing here with raising the expectations like yourself is, I think it's really important that we keep track of time, especially time when it comes to how it's spent in a board meeting. Value people's time. John will talk a bit more about the relationship side of things, and certainly a board meeting can include some relationship building, just some talking and how are things going since we last met, and kind of updates and things like that. But I think it's really important that we understand how to value somebody's time. And I think if you come into a board meeting and you are working, if you're working with the president of the board, if that's not you, and you're in conversation with the person, it's like, let's try to see if we can do this in 90 minutes. And a comprehensive board meeting, not a, boy, we don't have anything to talk about, but you've got things on your agenda, but you move it along. If everybody knows we're going to work at 90 minutes, we value your time, we know it's important, we want to keep things moving. I think that helps set the tenor in your board that, you know what, we come, there's agendas that are prepared, there are reports that are ready for us to look at in advance. We have a time frame that we're working on. I know when my next 2 meetings are scheduled the rest of this year. They're already on my calendar, so I know to work around them. Then that is starting to raise an expectation in your board that, if nothing else, that we're approaching this professionally, that we're not just kind of like doing it like we did in the old days where, it was real easy to pull a few of us together and we had an impromptu board meeting, and it happened on a Sunday afternoon and we're all eating hamburgers at somebody's house, but we're now moving to a level where we're thinking things through. And so I think be really disciplined about that. The best time to raise expectations with board members is this: when you onboard them. From the very beginning, before they even step into their first meeting, that's part of the process of helping them to know what is it going to be like to be a board member. The second best time is right now. So if you already got, I don't have any board members that are changing terms in the next couple of months, so I've got the board that I have now. How do I start this? You start right now, and it's going to take time. This is not an overnight process. I think a big mistake if you were to come away being really inspired. I want to raise the expectations, and you come back to your board and you say, we're going to do all these things, and it's starting, in 2 weeks. This is going to be a process that you're going to have to build out over time. But so when you do that, you're going to raise expectation slowly but steadily, and so that it gets to be where you'd like it to be. So the thing that if some of you are already tracking with this because your board members, and in theory this all sounds good, and you're thinking to yourself, there's no way, and you probably got a couple of people in your mind right now, there's no way that I'm going to get more out of them. There's no way that I can raise my expectation of what they're going to bring to the board. They're not going to go with this. They're going to give me all sorts of grief. They're going to be resistant. They're going to be hesitant, and it's going to cause more problems. It's worth, I might as well almost tune out for the rest of this webinar. Here's the question then. How do you raise expectations without disenfranchising your board members? How do you raise expectations without getting them going sideways or en masse just saying, sorry, we're not doing this anymore, if that's what it's going to be, I'm out of here? How do you get to where you want to be, taking in consideration where you are now? So this is kind of point number 2, and I think this is maybe one of the most important things that I'll say in my time with you. Anytime you raise expectations, you have to raise the rewards. So anytime I'm raising expectations of an individual, I have to raise the rewards or the incentives or the benefits that they're going to get out of it. So, for example, my kids are grown, but I raised 3 sons. And as those boys got older, they always had to do chores from a young age. But as they got older, I started looking around going, you know what? I raised 3 boys. I have yard work that needs to be done. There's things to be done that they can help their mom with. And I started looking around and going like, you know what? I'm raising the expectations. And so, they when they were too little to run a power mower, I was the one who mowed the lawn. But guess what? They reached that magic age where they could actually start and mow a lawn and edge it and clean it all up. Now, I was expecting more work out of them as they got older, not child labor, but I had raised my expectations, but I also raised the incentives. So my wife and I got together and we realized, you know what? Used to give them $1 a week or whatever it was when they were very little. It's like we have to start paying them a whole lot more in allowance. And I think towards the end in their high school years, they were making pretty decent allowance. So I raised the expectations. And oftentimes when we deal with an employee and we're raising the expectations, we give some sort of reward that applies to that individual. So, I want you to start doing this. It's a lot more work than what you do now. What kind of incentive do we give that person? I'm giving you a new job title to go with it, and we're going to give you a raise. So there's now an incentive to want to work harder. Or, you used to be an hourly employee and, we've just been watching your work and we're really thrilled. We have this opening over here. It's salaried. There's probably going to be a little increased demand on your time after, hours. And here's what it's going to detail. And that's the reward. That's the benefit. That's the thing that comes with it. Sometimes, in a larger corporation, it might be a reserved parking spot, whatever it might be. But we find a way to raise the expectations and to make that appealing by offering some sort of reward or benefit. So when it comes to your board, you're not paying your board. So your board is, there's nothing you can do there that can all of a sudden say like, you make nothing, I'm going to double it. You're still going to make nothing as a board member, but we're going to say you got a doubling in what you've been making. So with a board member, part of what you are painting for them is kind of like, what does this organization, or what does our organization look like? Where could it be headed? What do we want to accomplish? And so it's an envisioned future. It's talking to your board members individually, talking to your board collectively and saying, we've got some hard work to do this coming year. And we're all going to need to be at every meeting because we're talking about some major items. It might be a strategic plan. It might be a new program. It might be a building. It might be any of a number of things. And all of these things are so important. And I need everybody's thoughts and I need your input and we're going to need your expertise. But just think of what will happen a year from now if we do this. If this is the type of thing that happens, imagine what our organization. This is where we're headed. This is part of what we see us accomplishing in the future. And I think if you'll show the benefit side of it, and you get to help make this happen at the end of the year, or if it's a 2-year or 3-year process or whatever you're working on, at the end of that time, we will all get to celebrate this thing that a board member wants to know. I'm giving above and beyond myself. I'm giving to a greater purpose, a greater cause. And that's the envisioned future. That's the benefit that now you have helped your board to see. This is what we're contributing. So where do we start to raise expectations? I think there are 3 commitments that you're looking at. You're looking at a time commitment. I think that, and this is especially critical when you onboard new members, that you make them aware this is the time expectation that we think will happen each month. You will be attending a monthly board meeting. It will last 90 minutes. In addition, we put all of our board will serve on one of our committees. So there will be a second committee meeting each month. Once a year, we do an annual fundraiser. We already know the date when that's going to be. We want you to be present at that fundraiser. It's a major thing. And then additionally, in the spring, we're going to do a weekend board retreat with our key staff. And so here are the dates, and we want you to be attending those things. I think it's really critical that you let your board know that you expect time out of them. Again, diminished expectations, diminished returns. If your board will step up and say, okay, I can do that. And sometimes in that whole recruiting process, it might even be helping board members to just understand, we feel this is so important, and we know we're asking more time of you. And, you may want to look at, what you're doing now, and maybe there's something that if it doesn't quite fit in, we think this is important. And if you have to step away from something, or you need a couple of months to do some rearranging of your schedule of how you are doing things, we'll give you those couple months, because we know what we're doing is so critical and it's going to change lives. Second area is finances. A number of boards have a financial expectation of their board members. I've seen it worded as things like to give the best possible gift to the organization that they can possibly give. Sometimes I've seen a minimum dollar amount put in there. A board member will contribute at least $1,000 a year annually. But I think that it's got to be expected that board members will try to do their best, however you want to word that, however rigid you want it to be. And that probably is the type of thing you want to have a conversation with your board. Is that, you can't just set an arbitrary dollar amount, but it would be the type of thing where, some of the best run organizations, and you can say that with accuracy, the best run organizations, their board members are supporting them financially. And then that's also showing, because not everybody walks into a board understanding how to be the best board member. So you're also giving them an education in this process. And then I think in recruiting, this is a type of thing where what you want your board members to be, and where they can raise the expectation, is you want them to always be a talent scout with you for your organization. If they're having a conversation somewhere, they're at a a meeting, or they're with a group of people, they're looking at, oh, this person needs to volunteer. They've got a great skill set, and I could see them helping out in this program that we do over here. It might be even like coming to you and saying, I've got this friend, super sharp, served on boards before, just kind of has not been on a board for a while, not for any bad reason, just, his terms kind of came to an end. And I think he might be a potential board member. Would you meet with this person and let's talk it through? So I think you want to utilize your board to recruit. So if you'll raise the expectations, ask them to make a commitment of time, of finances, and just having that recruiting mindset. And then point number 3, if you treat your board members like leaders, guess what they're going to act like? They're going to act like leaders. And that's what we really want when it comes to board members. I don't think any of us see a value in having a yes-full board that, whatever you say or the board chair says, whoever, that's what happens. You want a board that really does contribute, that expands the horizons of your organization, that has skills that you don't have, that they're willing to contribute in a non-threatening way. And if you will start to treat your board members like they're leaders, and some of them you may look at and go like their leadership is minimal, but if you'll invest in them and treat them like a leader and say you are a leader, that will start to raise that leadership level. And I think, as you kind of look at a board member, and my decades of working with boards, is that my board members, when I was on a board and when I ran a board, they wanted to know that what they were doing mattered and that they personally were valuable to the organization. And if they understood that, they tended to give more, they tended to work harder, they tended to see the bigger picture, they tended to be more excited about the future. But if you have a board member that doesn't know how valuable they are to your organization, and doesn't see the benefit of belonging, guess what? They won't belong anymore. They'll drop out. They'll find an excuse. You'll hear things like, you know what, I'm just kind of busy. And you look at their life and you're going like, I don't think you're any busier than I am, but whatever. They'll find an excuse, but what they're really saying is, I don't feel like I'm able to contribute here. Now, if it's a prima donna, somebody wants to be the superstar, wave goodbye and say, we wish you well. But that's the exception. I think a lot of times when we see board members kind of slip away, it's kind of like, we'll make a difference. I could be here. I don't have to be here. I think nothing would really change. And sometimes we see good board members slip away, and maybe eventually they end up at another organization where they do feel like I'm an important component here and what I'm doing makes a difference. So we're gonna jump gears, and I'm gonna turn it over to John, and we're gonna get John back on here. John, go ahead and take it away.
Oh, let me get my webcam up here. Oops, hang on. There we are. Hi, guys. I want to talk about the relationship aspect of board members. You know, being on a board is a big commitment, time-wise and also relationally. Commitment is the key word there. You're going to have monthly meetings with this person for a number of years, 3 to 5, depending on what your bylaws say. And so you're going to be spending 75 to 100 hours with this person on a regular basis. And as Frank mentioned, you're going to have some clear expectations of what a board member does. And from a relationship point, when you begin to onboard this person or really begin to even potentially recruit them, you're really looking at how they're going to respond to some of those key expectations that Frank mentioned. Are they going to be willing to open their contacts and say, yes, these are the people that I work with, and I'm willing to freely give my contacts to the organization or to introduce you to key people. They're going to help you raise money. They're going to bring their expertise to bear. Those are really key expectations, but as you do that, how they respond to that will give you a great insight onto how they're going to function as a board member. And because it's such a big commitment, time-wise, financially, and in every other way, with their professional expertise, I think it's really important to build a relationship. And relationship is the key word, to build a relationship prior to asking somebody to be on the board. Now, usually, in my experience, or talking to so many people that are clients, they kind of go right for the jugular. They really, I need you to be on my board, and they push this kind of fast, instead of really kind of taking the time to get to know somebody. That might be 2 or 3 different events. That might be a luncheon, it might be a dinner, it might be a drink or coffee, whatever it might be, to really build that relationship and find out if this person is going to be a good person. Key questions to ask in your mind as you're doing this: do they have the professional expertise that we're looking for? Of course, you're always looking for, you know, people with good in finance, CPAs, finance people themselves. Lawyers are always good, marketing people, but you might need subject matter experts also that can come along. So do they have the professional credentials that you're looking for? It's a part of your overall matrix. The other thing is, do they really care about the issue? They might be really qualified professionally, but is this cause, the cause that you're driving, is this something that they can go, dang, I love doing this. I just think this is so important. And you have to ask them about that. You have to judge their level of excitement about this. If you're talking about the organization, the things that you've done and the accomplishments that you've made, and yet people kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I'm willing to do it, that's not the person you want. You really want a high level of interest about the organization, that they're real excited about it. And Frank mentioned this, but I want to again highlight these points about expectations. One of the big expectations, and I see this with a lot of the boards that we work with, is people have gotten on a board and they had no idea that they had to raise money. And they didn't know what to do, and that was a scary thing for them. And so helping them to understand, hey, in the first 90 days, we want you to make a specific amount of money. I knew one board that required $10,000 from every board member every year. It was a big deal. It's a big board. They raised a lot of money. I knew another board that would say, we expect between 1% and 3% of your annual income. Again, it was a lot of money, but people made that. And another expectation was when people said, well, I'll give you an amount that's personally significant to me, realizing that some people had a really high income and others maybe didn't have as much, but it was important for them. So, and then to ask for that in the first 90 days. So I had board members that I would onboard, I would explain this to them, send them a welcome letter, here you go, and I bookmarked 85 days out, and then I wrote a letter saying, thank you so much, here's your time, and I put the envelope in, and I watched for that envelope to come back in. If it didn't, we had a conversation. You really have to have those very clear things. And as Frank said, the relationship time. And think about spending 4 to 5 to 6 hours a month with this person. Are you going to feel comfortable? Are they going to understand the expectations? Are they going to be excited about the work? Are you going to be able to gel with this person? Are they going to be able to gel with the other people? And as Frank said, and I really like this idea that some people come with board experience, but you also have to see that you're training them to be on a board. And many people don't understand what that means, especially with a nonprofit organization, the uniqueness of the work that we do. So helping them to really invest in their career as a board member, as a professional, that you want to help benefit them by their experience on that. One of the key things that I learned the hard way was to imagine a boardroom, and I would literally kind of stand behind this person in my mind, put this new potential board member, and then I would look around the room and I would literally say, how are they going to relate to this person? How are they going to relate to this person? What about the other person in the corner? How about the person to their left and to their right? And if at any time I felt like they weren't going to gel, they weren't going to connect with people, it was always a little bit of a red flag to me. I had one board member one time, she was very good professional. She was an amazing person, but boy, she had to be right about everything, and she fought for having her way all the time. Well, that just doesn't work in a board. So we had to have some hard conversations with her. And I think that's often what happens with boards. Boards get dysfunctional at times because some of the leaders often don't want to have those difficult conversations. And that's why building a relationship is so important, because in every relationship, there will be a challenge. There's good times, there's hard times, but you have to be able to walk through them and have those conversations in a real critical way. Another way you can deal that is build a buddy system. Every new board member has a mentor, a partner they connect with, someone that really helps them understand how the board is functioning, helps them understand the personalities of different people, take them to a site or a different program. They really become a connecting point. Oftentimes people come into a new group and they don't understand who they can connect with or how they can function. And so building that relational capital is really, really critical, one with another. And in an orientation, again, you can onboard somebody one time and say, here's your board manual, and let me walk through it in a 2-hour period of time, and they're like glazing over. But you really have to do it 2 or 3 times. And it's really a good opportunity, again, on the relationship side, to sit down and make sure that they fully understand everything that's going on. I'm currently sitting on one board. It's had a lot of challenges over the years, and it's been making some changes. And the exec came in the other day and said, hey, I didn't tell you about X, Y, and Z. And all the board members kind of looked at each other like, what are you talking about? There was a program that was kind of off to the side that nobody ever talked about, but he had inherited, and he was trying to figure out what to do with it. And so it was one of those things that became a real issue for us to say, wait a minute, we didn't understand this. Let's talk about whether we should continue that or not. So the critical part with board members is don't make a fast decision. One of the ways you can slow down that process is giving them an application. This might sound a little elementary, but I think it's really important to have them fill out an application and say, this is what I've been through. Here's my past board experience. Yes, I understand these expectations, a job description that can go with it. Really understanding the work that they're getting into, that's a real critical point. And I think once they get on the board and they're feeling like, hey, we've got them here, spend time making sure they fully understand how everything works within the organization. Yes, we have policies and procedures manuals. Yes, we have one for our management, for our staffing, for our finance. Yes, we have a board manual. This is how it all works. As you go over all of these things with them, you can really begin to see where their interest level is, if it goes up or down. I know some people, as soon as you start talking finances and let's go over the balance sheet, they gloss over, they just can't deal with that. Others just really drill into it. That's an important thing to understand. Some people also build an advisory board on the side to build that relationship prior to, and they make sure that everybody goes on the advisory board for a year or two before they're even considered being on the board. Again, it's this relationship aspect that really helps you. One of the big things that I will tell you, and trust me on this, I have seen this work hundreds of times. Every quarter, you should meet with every board member one-on-one. Every board member, every quarter, one-on-one. And just build it into your calendar and schedule it with them in advance as much as you can. One, it just builds the relationship. Go to lunch, go to dinner, spend time with them, have them over to the house. It's an opportunity not to kind of so much talk about the work. You can do that, but you want to build a relationship. You want to understand who they are. And it's a great way to debrief on meetings. It's a great way to share vision. It's a great way to discuss challenges and to enhance that relationship in every way. So quarterly one-on-one meetings is really, really critical. The other thing that I found is I was working with one board one time, and there was some board member, it was a kind of a transition board. And there were a couple of board members that weren't doing really well. They were struggling, and the others were just rock stars. They were amazing. But we kept bumping into these two folks. So they spent some time in a meeting going over a job description of what a board member does. And really, everybody raised the expectations, as Frank was talking about. And two board members instantly said, we're out. They can't do it. So again, it's that expectation and that relationship comes together. The other thing that I think is really valuable in enhancing the relationship is to do a board assessment on an annual basis. And this is one of those things that you can build into your annual calendar. And if you don't have an annual calendar for your board, we can talk about that afterwards. That's a great thing to put together. But to build a board assessment where you really say, where is everybody and how is it working? It's a confidential assessment. We can help you with that. And I have found that very helpful in my one-on-one relationship with board members, as I thought they understood it and I had explained it to them. And yet when you really get down to it, there was something that was missing. It really helped me to understand what was going on as I could look over the assessments and see what was happening. Yes, it was confidential. I didn't know oftentimes who was giving what, but to be able to kind of go through it and go, I think this is the person that's struggling with that. It helps a lot. Providing ongoing education at the board, helping them to understand the work is really, really critical. And then as it gets to that point where they're finishing up their term, as Frank had mentioned earlier, some folks, you never want them to leave your board. They're the most amazing rock stars in the world, and you just think, oh my gosh, I can't function without you. So you need to keep them on again, and you want to push for that. Others, you're looking at, help me find somebody just like you. How do I do that? And also to thank people for their service. People work hard. They're going to volunteer for your organization. They're going to give their talent, their time, their treasury, and yet oftentimes they don't get thanked. I served on a board for 6 years, and I knew every Christmas we were going to have a rocking Christmas party, and they had these giant baskets, you know, wine and cheese and all these great chocolates and all, whatever. They really committed to thanking you every year for what you did. And it was really special. It was something I looked forward to. They were really great on an annual basis. We're going to have a 3-day trip. Please bring your wife. We're going to the desert. We're going to do our planning and review. So there's things like that that you can build in, even if you're a smaller organization. So as I looked back on that organization, I said, well, wait a minute, you're going to Palm Springs. How does this work? Well, we started meeting in trailers. Somebody had a trailer, and we went away and we camped for a while. So it can evolve over time. But thanking your board member every year and letting them know how much you appreciate them. It's all about relationship. And the relationship that you establish with board members is so critical because the way you treat the board and the way they treat you sets a tone for the whole organization. So as a key leader, you have the opportunity to set that level. And if you're sharing your struggles, if you're open about the challenges that are going on, if you're open about where you are as a leader and how you want to grow, board members really respond to that. If you don't open up and set that tone initially, they're going to be hesitant and people will pose. But if it becomes a safe environment where people can share and they know what's going on, you're going to build a great team. So I'm going to turn it back to Frank here, and let's get together here.
Hey, John. So John, I'm going to put you on the spot, and as we're going to interact for just a second, in your control panel, if you haven't noticed this already, there is a place where you can ask questions, and you just type them right in there. So if you've got a question that has come as we're talking about boards, feel free to type it right in there, and then John, either one of us or both of us will respond to it. So we want to make sure that we're hitting where you live right now. But John, here's my question to you. You and I have both led boards, been on boards for cumulatively probably like 50 or more years. So I want you to think right now about the best board member you ever worked with or had on a board. Okay, somebody come to your mind?
Yep.
Okay, so now tell me, what were the qualities that board member had?
That board member was experienced. That board member came prepared and understood the role of a board member. They gave money. They were active and willing to meet with me on time or outside of the meetings. They felt like it was an important part of their faith. In fact, I had a ministry that I was involved in, and we had a Jewish board member who did not understand our faith, but loved the work that we were doing. And he was absolutely the best board member I had ever had because he was so, he was able to connect his faith to our work, and that was important. He brought his kids along at times to meetings to understand what we were doing. They sat there quietly and listening. He was just an amazing, amazing board member. And what's nice is even after he left the board, he was still supporting the board, and he was a great resource for me to go and talk to him offline and go, hey, I'm having a challenge. What do I do about X, Y, and Z? He was just a wonderful, and he's still a good friend of mine.
Okay. And did that individual become a better board member as you cultivated a deeper relationship with them?
Yeah, very much, very much. He was an amazing board member. He began to understand more about some of the challenges that we were facing and was able to bring great ideas to bear. Because of his past experience, he had a wealth of business experience. He was a very smart guy. But on top of that, it was just he understood me and the unique things that I was trying to implement. And he would have some feedback at times and go, I don't think this is going to work, John. You're missing something. And I always wanted to hear that. But he knew me, and the relationship really did enhance that.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the board member that comes to my mind, the best one I ever worked with, and already was an excellent board member before I started serving with them on the board. But I watched them become a better board member over the years and helped me to become a better director. And I would say that cultivating relationships, the same thing. I would meet with him numerous times. I'd have lunch with him at his house. He was retired. We'd sometimes have coffee. He never missed a meeting unless, he was, out of town or deathly ill. So took a high level commitment, financially supported our organization. And I think probably he understood intuitively, and this is something not all board members do, but he understood the importance of having a higher expectation. Matter of fact, I think he could get more frustrated than I could when there was a board member that did not have high, expectations of what their role was.
Right. And I think that's a great idea. You bring up a really good point. I think it's important for an exec and a board president to meet together and to really outline what would be the ideal board member. What do we really expect? Really do some of that high level thinking so that you can continually elevate your board. It's good for them, it's good for you. And And again, sometimes the relationship is very important, especially when things aren't going well. And to be able to have those, I call them come to Jesus meetings, or kind of a put all your cards on the table, we're going to have a hard conversation, and to work through things because you've had a relationship and they know that you care about them as a person.
Yeah. And I think one of the things John and I have touched on, I've told, I may even told some of you as executive directors, when it comes to employees, when you get an employee that says they're leaving, you'll have one of three responses. You'll go, oh no, you're like in panic. What are we going to do? They're such an integral part of who we've been. How are we going to fill those shoes? And then most of the time it's, oh well, I mean, it's, I'm going to have to figure out what we're going to do, but it's, we'll make it fine. And then every once in a while, depending on where you're at in your organization, it's an, oh yes, I'm so, you don't tell anybody, but you're rejoicing. You're doing a happy dance when they tell you they're leaving because they've been more trouble than they're worth. So as you look at your board and as you kind of think about some of these things, if you do the cultivate the relationship side, that's the positive. That's the loving on. We're part of a team. It's not phony. It's genuine because you want their support. That's going to help raise the whole unity of the team. Then you raise the expectations at the same time. But if you're thinking about this and you're going like, well, I may lose a board member or two, my hunch is that if you lose somebody deep down inside, it's the, oh yes, it's like we would probably be better off without. You want to work on the, well, oh wells. Can you help the ones that are like, can you help them to be better? Can you help them to buy in? Usually the ones that are the, oh no, what are we going to do if I lose this board member? They already understand the commitment level, the expectation, and you just want to make sure they don't come to that decision of leaving because you haven't cultivated a relationship, help them to see how valuable they are. You want them to like leave because of health reasons, or we're moving to Idaho or whatever it might be, but you want it to be for those kind of reasons. Would you add anything else to that, John?
I think it's, as the leader of the group, even if you're not the president, you really set the level of openness and the depth of the relationship that can be established. And that means you have to take a personal risk at sharing your stuff, sharing your struggles, sharing who you are. And that's the heart of building relationship, is building that trust. And it'll happen fast, but you get to set that level. So you have to take that risk yourself. And I think that's very important.
Good, good. Well, we're so thankful you have been on this webinar with us today. As always, we will make the video of this available to you in the next day or two. You're free to share that with your staff, or maybe this is a good training video to do with your board, and maybe there's some value that your board will just say, hey, here's a couple of guys, they call themselves consultants to nonprofits, and here's what they're saying. And but our whole point is we're in this together. No good organization runs without a good executive director. No good organization runs without a good board. And equally are important. And we want you to have the best board possible that will support you as you support your organization. So we'll look forward to talking with you. Some of you we do the coaching calls with. Otherwise, next month, remember, we'll switch formats. We're going to move to Zoom. You'll get all the information in advance so you know how to do that. But if you want to make sure you have the Zoom app ready to go, and it'll be, we'll all get to see each other, and I'm looking forward to that. Some of you I've seen on the calls month after month, looking forward to seeing your faces, and we'll feel like we're participating together. John, anything in closing?
Nope. Oh, I would say yes. We've done a lot of work in board assessment and training boards, board retreats. So if you're really having some challenges with boards, please let us know. We're here to help, as always.
All right. We'll see you next month, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.